Good morning and welcome to the pre-agenda interview for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. We have one appointment to the Land Bank Board of Directors. Tamara, and if you could say your last name. Dedukovich. Tamara Dedukovich. And I'm joined by Council Member Kahari Mosley.
I'm walking out.
I'm joined by Council Member Kahari Mosley. And looks like we got our audio figured out. Thank you to our Cable Bureau. Will the clerk please read the title of the bill?
Bill 282, Resolution appointing Tamara Dedukovich as a member of the Land Bank Board of Directors, replacing Douglas Anderson with a term to expire January 1st, 2027.
Thank you. Welcome to the table. Welcome to, congratulations on your nomination. And I'd like to just, before we open it up to any questions that the member joining us today or I might have, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit more about your background. I know we have it in front of us, but for the public's awareness and your interest in serving on the Land Bank Board.
Sure. Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Councilwoman. And, I'm honored for this opportunity. It's kind of a full circle moment for me in terms of my professional career. Back in the mid-1980s, when I was a staff member for what was then called the Pittsburgh Clean City Committee, we were charged with the maintenance contracts that the URA had for URA and city-owned vacant parcels of land. And so throughout the last 4 decades, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the aughts and now, dealing with the city's inventory of vacant land has been something that I've touched, again, from either a maintenance standpoint or during my years as an affordable housing developer, doing a lot of neighborhood revitalization work in city neighborhoods, came to appreciate and understand the value that vacant land has on the potential of our neighborhoods to be vibrant places rather than blighting influences, and how, even bringing them back either to greenways or side yard uses, as we were focusing on in the 80s, to having more developed neighborhood plans that call for more ambitious redevelopment and disposition today is something that I have dealt with. And also, I spent a few years as well as a originator and underwriter for community reinvestment products at the Bank of New York Mellon, and so also appreciate the lender's perspective and the importance of having clean, clear title, and understanding the collateral value and the importance of that. So I can just say, in observing what the Land Bank has done in the last several years, really it seems like the last 2.5 years, suddenly there's momentum for this issue that has been a concern from the days when everything was on paper maps. You had to know exactly who to call to figure out how to move things along, and then they often didn't get moved along because of the legal entanglements. So seeing properties actually get cleared and transferred and seeing that the tools are in place to have an impact is really an exciting time to be asked to serve on the board.
Thank you. Councilman Mosley, do you have any questions for?
Yeah, sure. Based, on the width and the breadth of your experience, in this space, is there anything that stands out particularly that interests you the most about being on the Land Bank Board?
I think connecting the opportunities and, again, the inventory and database, how to make that available and accessible to the public, but tying that and connecting it to feasible development plans is the piece that I'm most interested in, is seeing that connection happen. And I say that because it was extraordinarily gratifying for me when I was reading through the 2023 annual report, to see an organization who I had worked with in one of my prior positions, who had been struggling to acquire properties in the Hill District, actually able to move forward. And I mean, honestly, that was 5 or 6 years ago they were trying to get them. And they had a feasible development plan 5 or 6 years ago. So being able to, make the connections and making sure that the land bank is a facilitator and not an impediment. And not that it would be an impediment, but making sure that the, processes are as streamlined as possible so that it can fulfill the goals.
I just have one other question to open it up. For my colleagues, as a new member of the Land Bank Board, one of the things that we've seen, and I'm sure Board Chair Councilman Wilson next to me can attest to this too, is that as Land Bank has become more effective, in recent months, and properties, are actually, moving. One of the pushbacks that we're starting to get is trying to identify, how do we create on-ramps for individual citizens and folks that aren't experts, like CDCs and nonprofit organizations that are operating in this space, who know how to navigate the system, as well as have a wealth of resources, whether from philanthropic sources, and other sources. Do you have any thoughts from your experience about how we can continue to do the work that we need to do? Because one of the things that I let folks know is that one of the dynamics that we're dealing with is we can't let these properties go to the wrecking ball while we wait to perfect the system. So like balancing the need to salvage as many properties and get as many properties back on the tax roll, as well as creating a wealth of on-ramps for those who aren't CDCs and nonprofits and have a wealth of experience in the real estate space.
Right. I guess, what I would say about that, and I understand and support that goal as well, right? Because we want to have the neighbors who have perhaps been negatively impacted by the vacancy or the blight have an opportunity to participate in the turnaround of those properties. I'm a believer in, old-fashioned, low-tech technical assistance as one thing. I think that as a parallel example, and obviously they're not identical, but the work that the City of Bridges Land Trust does in terms of outreach to homeowners, just traditional meetings, getting out there to neighborhood organizations, again, not necessarily the CDCs, but at neighborhood gatherings to inform and educate and help navigate the technical tools, which again are, far and away so much more accessible in terms of understanding what is out there, but it still is a complicated legal process. And so I think the more kind of hands-on layperson simplification and one-on-one that can be done. Like I was excited to see that the land bank has been doing office hours, right? And drop-in times to provide that. I think continuing those kinds of efforts are important.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. We have been joined by Councilman Bobby Wilson, Councilperson Barb Warwick. Councilman Wilson, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
From across the table.
Yes.
I appreciate your willingness to serve and looking forward to working with you. I was reading over this cover letter here of experience. And I see that you there's a lot of expertise in affordable housing and community development. Can you explain, are there any challenges that you see the land bank to continue to be involved with projects that offer affordable housing?
Well, I think scale is always a concern, right? So frankly, one of the things that I appreciate, but I'm not sure how it scales, is the preference for projects that have a 25% affordability component. Because again, unless you're assembling a fairly large number of lots, I think what we're primarily talking about are smaller scale developments, which, if they are commercial developments, as in multifamily rental, they're more difficult to finance, more difficult to operate. So I think, in taking 25% out of an 8-unit project is a lot different than 25% out of a 20-unit project, right? Just in terms of the bottom line impacts.
We're definitely on the smaller scale.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're,
So I think,
mostly is like individual properties working with individual,
right.
community groups or community groups that have partnered with other nonprofits that have similar expertise to try and get it done.
Right. So I see this as a real tool for the infill properties, right? And frankly, aligning well with the zoning changes, the proposed zoning changes that you've introduced, where these could be duplex or quadruplex
Right. And that's
developments.
yeah.
And that is a huge game changer in terms of neighborhood economics and affordability.
I've seen the land bank actually focus on acquiring properties that are already
Right.
sharing that wall.
Right.
Because of the risk of the challenges of zoning,
Right.
but hopefully that's fixed soon. But just the challenge, even
Yeah.
the more expensive route. If we tear it down and then we have to build that again. So, all right. So the other thing I just want to dial in a little more what my colleague Councilman Mosley was mentioning was just like moving forward to the individual people who would acquire the property.
Right.
So whether it's one person, a couple, a family that would, I guess we're envisioning similar process to how other cities like Detroit have it, where there's a deed restriction on the property. They show how much they're capable of doing now on the property. And then we offload that to the buyer, but then they have to prove that they are doing work on it.
Right.
And so that's one component of like where we need to go. But also the other component is that we know that we won't be fully successful unless we're doing market rate, at some point. And so to get there, and really essentially that's what, moving in that direction of just regular, buyers that live in the community or just the community over that want to move to that community. It's all going to be a process where right now we have a backlog of properties that the community has requested. So as we move forward, there'll be a mix of different types of sales, and just didn't know how you felt about that.
I think that anytime you can have a diversity of users and a diversity of uses, you're going to get a better outcome. So, and my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not, but from what I read about the existing covenants that are proposed to be put in place, they are getting at that intent, right? Of you said you were going to use it this way, we're going to hold you to that through a deed restriction or covenant, right? And there is the reversion if it doesn't happen, right? So I think that's important for that kind of accountability. I also think, though, that one thing I appreciate as an affordable housing developer is, trying to move away from the term affordable but to attainable housing, right? Is we, as a country, not just in this market, have such a scarcity of resources and opportunities going to that 80 to 120% area median income. And so seeing that the land bank prioritized uses up to 80% AMI I think is very valuable, because it's getting at what is affordable to people in most of our neighborhoods. And so it's getting to that price point that is, frankly, market or a little bit below market, but it's within reach of people who otherwise are being priced out. I think the fundamental thing about land in the equation of affordable housing and community development is it's really the big cost variable. The cost of the structures don't change very much. It's the cost of the land. And so to be able to convey land at a very low cost is already step one in being able to make what is being developed affordable without necessarily compromising the quality of the structure that's being put there.
Yeah, definitely some challenges there, but a lot of opportunity. And you're coming in at a great time. The land bank is positioned to be very successful due to the past agreement that was done between the URA and the city and the land bank. I want to thank Solicitor Kubiak for all her work on that. And then we move forward to, we just authorized the mayor to enter into negotiations with the three taxing bodies, the 3TB agreement with the land bank,
Right.
so that when we can agree upon several things to be successful at the sheriff's sale, even the treasurer's sale, a lot of different scenarios where they'll provide a lot more tools for the land bank to be successful. So thank you for coming today, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilperson Warwick.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for being here and for offering to serve on this board. Yeah, so I have a few, just a couple questions. So with regard to what Councilman Mosley was asking, just in terms of the sort of technical assistance. So, I mean, there is within communities, there is, when it comes to the CDCs, I think there's a lot of mistrust. There's sort of this sense of the CDCs are, quote, buying up all the properties, and they are. They really are. So I would like to see more opportunity for residents to, whether that's, buying the house next door and fixing it up for your kids, or even as a rental, whether that's, housing co-ops getting together as a group of neighbors and buying a house or multiple houses or whatever. In terms of, technical so what are your thoughts on the land bank actually facilitating that, as opposed to just advising? Because it's very complicated, right? To the whole, whether you're doing a conservatorship or your treasurer's sale, sheriff's sale, all of that. So, I would like to see a space where the land bank is actually doing that work in order to, clear the titles, and then just selling those properties at a very low cost to the local residents in the community. Do you have thoughts on how that might work?
Again, my understanding is also that there is, as you alluded to, there's a backlog. So part of it is getting through a backlog of requests, but it's also resource allocation. And this is something, I think it's important to be strategic about where the land bank is more directly intervening in the, I'll just call it acquisition, whether that means literal acquisition or the prepping of properties to facilitate their transfer. There needs to be that initial education, broad outreach to let people know that these opportunities are out there for individuals. And then there also needs to be a level of connection and follow through where there is an impulse to explore it, so that it's not a random, let's look at a map and, oh, that street has, 6 parcels, or that block has 6 parcels, without knowing that the neighbors on that block are receptive, right? So that's, again, what I consider that low-tech technical assistance, right? They actually getting out there, talking to people, gauging interest, and making them aware realistically of the time that's going to be involved, the effort that's going to be involved, and also tying them to, preparatory resources that already exist in the community, whether it's, financial training, anything else that they may need to be in a, credit-worthy position to carry out the redevelopment. So, I mean, I certainly support that ambition, but I think that's where it gets into the what's on the plate of the staff and what are the resources that are available.
Yeah, I mean, I would be all for expanding the staff of the land bank if that was the purpose of doing so, right? Is to really create not just somewhere where you can sort of, get an FAQ on how to deal with it. Like, that's not helpful to most people, right? But actually doing the work, like actually sitting down and being like, oh, this is the property. We are going to get this in a place, and we're going to help you get the, you want to do a housing co-op. This is your idea. Getting actually holding people's hands through that process. Once those folks have been determined to actually have the capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then sort of along the same lines, and I bring it up, the CDs, they do great work, right? I don't want to knock what they do. Like taking vacant buildings and turning them into affordable housing is very worthwhile. It's just, it's the perception, right, within communities, and it would be nice to be able to point to examples of, like, well, sure, like, a lot of these houses are getting, bought and rehabbed and sold as affordable by these professional organizations. But look, we also have these success stories of folks, building their own generational wealth or whatever it is that they're doing with those properties. But so with that, that's another, so we talked about sort of the requirement that once you get a property that you move on rehabbing it. But I feel already that we are seeing, I certainly have seen this with CDCs where they get overextended. And there has been a lot of movement. Lots of properties have been sold in the past year, which is great. But I am a little concerned. I know of a number of properties that have sort of been in the hands of CDCs for a year or more, and nothing has been done. And so it's sort of like going from, so I would like your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that this is why, again, I would be a proponent of having as many properties as far along in the process as possible, just as a, forget the resource constraints, right? Because these projects, and particularly, when it is a CDC who is acquiring it for a larger scale project, they have very long gestation periods. And I think people tend to underestimate how long it takes for all the pieces to come together, and how critical it is to be able to say you have site control to get the resources to continue to put those pieces together. Right? As soon as you have that land, you have credibility with funders. You can start bringing in pre-development resources that may otherwise have been unlocked, because you can use the property as collateral. And so oftentimes the period that goes into assembling the properties is a lost opportunity time. And so the clock really only starts when the site control is in place. So it takes typically 2 years or more to get the main funding in place before you start seeing dirt moved. So to me, it's not unrealistic that things haven't happened for close to a year necessarily. I mean, I don't know the facts and circumstances, but what I think is equally important is during that time, have they demonstrated that they're at least better stewards of the vacant property, right? Is it, if it's a structure, is it boarded and sealed and not a nuisance to the community? If it's a vacant lot, is it cut? Is it somehow, maintained or lit? I mean, there are those kinds of things that I think demonstrate good stewardship that should be appreciated as kind of interim before you see the dirt move or the new siding go up on a property.
And so with that in mind, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but with that in mind, that a CDC, it takes a certain amount of time, certainly with affordable projects, right, to kind of get all the money, to get, figure out how you're going to pay for that, whether it's,
Right.
Whatever kind of deals you're getting or subsidies and whatnot. In communities where market rate is still affordable, and we have many of those communities here in Pittsburgh, right, where just market rate is affordable, would it not be faster in certain cases for the land bank to, rather than selling to CDCs, sell to a market rate developer that is going to put up a market rate house that will be affordable in that neighborhood at this time?
I think that is, again, dependent on scale, right? Because I would say probably in principle, sure, but I don't know how many market rate developers are interested in doing one-offs or two-offs in those situations, right? So I would hope that they're treated the same way that any individual resident is, in terms of, again, having a clarity of here's what it takes and let's make it available, right? But I think it needs to be initiated by the person who wants to do the development.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking because certainly with city-owned properties, this wouldn't be an option with privately owned, but, I'm definitely interested in deed restrictions where you could sell it for market rate today, right? It could be market rate today, but that it has to, I mean, whether that's like a rent stabilization built into the deed or some other type of cost stabilization, so that, if 10 years from now this neighborhood has become hot and now the thing is worth, right, 3 times as much, being able to cap that.
Well, yeah, and I would again look to the suite of tools that the URA and lenders have with regard to their community development products that do that, right? There used to be shared appreciation components and features of some of the URA funding programs. So I think there is a precedent for doing that, but I think that whether it gets tied to the land transfer or whether it gets tied to the development financing is, a programmatic question that I would hope that there's going to be creativity and interaction between the staffs of the URA, Housing Department, Lending Department, and the Land Bank and the city, and looking at a whole range of affordable housing solutions. I mean, coming at this from somebody who cares about making sure, first and foremost, that Pittsburghers have an opportunity to live decently, affordably, with dignity at a price that they can afford. We need to be operating at every space in the market, but not every tool works in every space in the market. And so I don't know that the land bank can be solving all of those things, but I certainly think that addressing how land gets transferred is a component of any of those solutions.
I think that's all for me.
Thanks, Councilperson. I think all my questions have been asked, so I just want to reiterate, I appreciate your willingness to serve. Thank you, and look forward to a forthcoming vote on your nomination. So thank you for being here
Thanks
today.
for the opportunity.
And with that, recognizing that we have a long agenda today, I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess, ask for a motion for a 5-minute recess while we gather quorum, and stay close so that we can get going pretty soon. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-minute recess? We are recessed. Good morning and welcome to the reconvened meeting, standing committee meeting for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. For meeting and public comment announcements, all council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website. And for guest speakers, please do not turn your microphones off if you're joining us as a guest today. Our first order of business is roll call, and will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Charland.
Here.
Mr. Coghill.
Here.
Ms. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Lavelle. Mr. Mosley. Mrs. Cal Smith. Ms. Warwick.
Things got kind of parlayed there.
Mr. Wilson.
Kenny.
Ms. Strasburger.
Here.
We don't have a quorum. 5 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which are or may be before city council. Profanity will not be permitted. I do want to add that because of circumstances out of our control today, we are unable to access the speaker registration website and cannot see any speakers who registered after at 5 p.m. yesterday. We apologize to anyone who was not able to speak today, joining virtually, though I will remind you that anyone in chambers wishing to speak still will be able to speak. For those speaking, please state your name and neighborhood for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller.
Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller, Belsuver, Timbuktu, Mali. Magic realism. Anos Soledad Cieno, Global Intelligence Society candidate for president, and the globalintelligencesociety.org website. I am in favor of uncensored freedom of speech. This council is in favor of censored freedom of speech and public comment. A council concern is excellence. Would any of you disagree with that? Excellence that has to do with non-AI, human superior information, and superintelligence. Gabo is a Latin intelligence reference. I think that it is necessary to establish countrywide and citywide centers of excellence. In Pittsburgh, 1 for each district. District 3 already has one in the Center for Global Studies International Interdisciplinary, which I founded. Do so for the other 8 districts informed by, from Africa, Hausa, Ignansi, a Nigerian CBR, Ignansi model for Amafi, Giayu, Duka, Info Intel Center of Excellence in District 6, The Hill, and District 9, Homewood, model in Lagos, African Center of Excellence for Innovative and Transformative STEM Education. How about at Westinghouse High School? Are you listening? $200,000 a year, Walters. Go to Lagos. Asia Nihongo Yushu, a Japanese Chushin Yushu model for Asai Dai, Info Intel Center of Excellence in District 5, Squirrel Hill, District 8, Oakland, model in Mbare, within the nationwide Global Centers of Excellence initiative. It is the Center of Excellence for Brain Science and Technology at Tamagawa University. Espanol, Latin America, Excelencia, a Chilean Center de Excelencia model for an Optimo Info Intel Center of Excellence in District 4, Carrick, District 7, Lawrenceville, model in Santiago within the National Research Centers of Excellence program, Center of Excellence in Astrophysics and Astrobiology. In Europe, Deutsche Vortrefflichkeit, a German Centrum Vortrefflichkeit Model 4 of Vornehmst Info Intel Center of Excellence in District 1, Germantown. District 2, Sheridan in München is the model within the Federal Clusters of Excellence Network. Center of Excellence for Quantum Science and Technology. I reference Jaime Escalante as another role model for Latin intelligence.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Ikahana Halmakina. Do not see Ikahana Halmakina. We will move on to Arkasanti Lee. Arkasanti Lee. We will move then on to John Hanrahan.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Hanrahan. I live at 439 Katona Street in Fineview in District 1. I'm here to comment on the LERTA bill. Headline, I think it's a bad bill. I hope it doesn't pass. But knowing that it will pass, I would like to offer my thoughts on it as it stands currently. First, I'll start with the things that I agree with. I, too, worry about our city's finances every time I read about some devaluation of another huge building downtown. I too believe that we need more housing downtown, and I think that will help stabilize the neighborhood, stabilize the city's finances. I think it's also good just as an urban practice. I also believe, and I see that it is really difficult to convert these commercial buildings downtown to residential. It's tricky, and I think there are ways that the city can help. However, there are a few things in the bill that I think could be improved or should be totally changed. And I'll kind of start with some simpler ones. First is parking. And this is a legally tricky one. I see how, I have a garage in my house, and I understand that is part of the residence, in the same way that a parking garage as part of an apartment building downtown would be part of that residence. Still, I think the bill is written in such a way that would encourage the construction or establishment of new parking facilities downtown, when we should be discouraging, especially downtown, new parking facilities. So again, it's legally tricky. I don't know how you do it, but maybe there's a way to not encourage adding parking downtown in this bill. Second, the role of hotels in this bill is really worrying. I would hate to see this bill pass and then it only benefit the developers of hotels, and instead of getting apartment buildings and condos, we just get a bunch of Hampton Inns. I think that is that's just, there's no reason for that, and having hotels just does not help. I'm sure it helps the building owners, but that's about it. So I would like to see hotels removed completely from this bill. Third, the AMI for this bill, I believe the range is too high at 80% AMI is what's currently written in the bill that I see. And as Dave Bringen from Lawrenceville United brilliantly pointed out a couple weeks ago, the 80% range actually has more than enough supply as of the 2022 housing needs assessment. Where the need is most concentrated in the sub 30% AMI range, and then also it would help to have 50% as well. So if you could, limit somehow the AMI that is being built here, I think that would go further towards our goals of housing justice, basically. And then finally,
Thank you. You're welcome to submit your comments, your written comments to council. Thank you. Having exhausted our registered speakers, we will now open it up to anyone who is in the audience wishing to speak. Are there any speakers wishing to come to the podium?
Good morning. My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street. That's up at Bedford, the top of the hill. You see that senior citizen home? That's 190 apartments in that building. I'm a little upset and a little concerned about our mayor in the way whenever you try to, when I try to ask to be able to have a meeting with him before I come before you, council, to tell you what I think he's doing wrong, he didn't do it. And when I tried to talk to him, caught him outside, and he's going to talk about, oh, come on, Miss Brown, we from the hood. And like I said, I'm from the hood, and my son died in Wilkinsburg, the hood where the mayor, Gainey was the state representative. Never once has he ever said anything to me about my son or any kind of condolences, which he doesn't have to. But I believe that whenever you get much or you receive much, like he's the mayor of this city, I believe that everyone should be treated as if they're human beings. Some dignity, some kind of respect. Now, I was out there, I'm looking at his sign, and it says that he wants everyone to be safe and welcome. And he says that he wants perfect. He's not looking for perfect, but he's looking for excellent. Well, I want you to think about all the years that Dr. Miller has been coming down, and that's what he has said. So now our mayor has taken that on like he's for everybody, so everybody can thrive. But when he comes up in the building, goes down in the cellar, doesn't go to the manager, and he brings proclamations. Of course, we know we got boxes of them, but he buys a plaque for one of his cronies, Saludine's brother, just moved in our building, and he's cleaning up by August Wilson's place. Okay, so I asked the mayor, how you even know about him up there cleaning? He's not cleaning in front of the building, in front of where we live, which I did. See, what I want you to understand, when I say much is, when you got much is expected, anytime he's the mayor, he's supposed to be able to listen to everybody. His crony, the campaign manager, Gloria, took and said, oh, he don't want to listen, and he don't pay no attention to her. And which is the truth, because there were 5 women that came down and said, we are being harassed and beaten up in the building. A senior came out, opened her door. They bum rushed her. She had 2 black eyes. She's since moved. Now they tell me she lost an eye. But the mayor can come in the building, down in the cellar, don't go to the manager, and the citizens didn't know he was there. They were mad when they found out, and my time is up. But please, let's look at this mirror again.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Bob Damewood. I'm a resident of Mount Washington. I'm a staff attorney with Regional Housing Legal Services. We're a statewide nonprofit law firm. We represent nonprofit developers of affordable housing, and we engage in research and policy advocacy on policies that benefit low-income Pennsylvanians. I think we all agree downtown is the cultural and transit hub of the region. And it needs to be a vibrant place that welcomes and serves everybody. And you have a really difficult task in front of you, right? You know, like increased office vacancies, decreased assessment values. I mean, I don't envy your job. I really don't. And I commend you for considering options for, providing incentives for converting vacant office space to residential. But as you do that, I ask that council learn from the city's experience with warehouse conversions. If you go to the places where warehouses have converted to residential, you'll see that they are served, that the housing and the businesses there serve a very narrow demographic slice. And if neighborhoods want to do that, that's fine. We can choose to go there or not to go there. Downtown's different, right? Downtown is the cultural and transit hub of the region. It needs to reflect the entire region. It needs to welcome and serve everyone. And that means, that any tools that we use for office conversion to residential need to bake in real, achievable, and deep affordability commitments. The plan for downtown conversion needs to ensure that there's a place for people whose jobs no longer pay enough for them to afford to live in this city. One affordability metric that's been proposed is 80% area median income. I have rent levels with me. I'll pass them out if you'll permit me. But that equates to $1,400 a month for a studio apartment, including utilities, $1,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, including utilities. No one can afford that. Very few working people can afford those rents. I want to echo the previous speaker who mentioned that the housing needs assessment, Pittsburgh's housing needs assessment, reveals that there's an oversupply of housing that's affordable at 80% AMI in the city of Pittsburgh. The gaps are at deeper income levels, at 30% AMI, 50% AMI. And we can make those pencil by providing an option for property owners to use housing choice vouchers. I have those payment standards as well. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeremy Waldrop, representing downtown, but a resident of Friendship. I'm president and CEO of the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, a place management organization who's a crucial partner, or we like to think we are, with the city of Pittsburgh in supporting downtown and its health and vitality. First of all, I'd like to thank you for considering and hopefully supporting this bill to provide the enhanced LRTA for downtown redevelopment. We at the PDP are doing everything we can to reposition downtown for a vibrant future, less reliant on daytime office employees and more rooted in opportunities for socializing, recreation, and ultimately building toward a future with a much higher residential population. To that end, this legislation will be an important piece in the puzzle to making that a reality. To bring that future, we need housing of all types. Housing for all and a downtown for all that this legislation supports. The PDP and the city face the same reality, a downtown tax base that is headed toward a short-term crisis in need of a long-term solution. This legislation is not only a part of that solution, but also is an important symbolic show of support towards solutions. That show of support is important right now as we work with partners to seek additional funds from state and federal government, philanthropy, corporate partners, private investment, and many more. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment for the city and, frankly, our region, committing to a vibrant future for downtown. Through our Business Improvement District, we receive funds from a millage assessment on commercial properties. This directly supports our on-street services, our clean team, our ambassador programs, and our outreach services. We're currently on track to be refunding 15% of those support from new assessments. We expect this trend to continue. As we can only imagine what budget challenges this decline will pose for you in considering its impact to citywide services. We're in this together, and we're happy to continue working with you all to overcome this challenge, and we appreciate your support today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Any further speakers? There being no further speakers, we will now move on to our standing committee's agenda. Our first committee is Finance and Law.
Bill 89, deferred paper, resolution amending Resolution 909 of 2023, titled Resolution Authorizing the Fee Schedule for 2024 pursuant to Chapter 170 of the City Code to reduce the cost of employee parking.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
Sorry, I just want to hold it for 1 week, please. We're working with the administration on it.
Okay.
Second. We may not even need it. So
Motion and a second to hold 1 week. All those in favor of a 1 week hold, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank
Bill
you,
will be held
Councilman.
for 1 week. Bill 256.
Bill 256, ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh City Code Title II, Fiscal Article 9, Property Taxes by creating a new Chapter 268, Real Estate Tax Exemptions for construction or adaptive reuse of buildings in downtown Pittsburgh.
Motion to approve discussion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Councilman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate all public commenters and everyone that I've been working with for the past 2 weeks, and really for the past 5 months on this bill. I believe that we have, as others have stated, a very important moment in front of us, and that's why everyone is very intently involved in the conversation. I have to say that I started representing downtown not too long ago, and was, similar to, when the mayor took office, a bridge fell. That's what it felt like when I started having conversations with people downtown that either own property, people that work downtown, service workers, the unions that represent them, and quite frankly, the neighborhood groups and people like the PDP, people like the Allegheny Conference. There's quarterly meetings that happen with the mayor's office to address the concerns that are taking place. There's multiple efforts happening all at one time, and it's just all for the plain and simple thing that we see in the news every day, that there's 30% vacancy downtown in commercial office space, and that's only to increase. And so whenever I entered these conversations, I was initially thinking, well, what could we do? I mean, we don't have an RCAP system. We don't have funds. We're literally taking out loans to try and support affordable housing and sending that over to the URA. We literally don't have many tools at the city to find ways to help some of these conversions that are desperately needed to make sure that we still capture 25% of our real estate tax. And so with that, set forth to create a bill that will be a tool to help multiple different projects pencil out so that we are in line with keeping that 25% of our real estate tax. So I do have an amendment that I'd like to make a motion for so that we can discuss.
That's not yours.
This amendment here, I'm happy to discuss. I can't remember the actual procedure that we like most here, whether I discuss it before the motion or after. Is there a preference?
Your prerogative.
That's it?
Is it amendment by substitution?
Amendment by substitution with the bill. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to substitute the bill with the amendment that you see on the table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
So, I just want to go through the different points of it.
Councilwoman Gross asked for discussion. Would you like to allow for the amendment sponsor to illustrate the contents of the bill, of the amendment?
Sure.
Okay, great. So, in the past several weeks, well, a couple weeks here, I wanted to make sure that we're speaking to the needs of multiple different people that are interested in making sure this is a successful bill. So with that, there was big request to change multiple things. This isn't in order in the biggest request to the smallest, but there was a definite need for added language so that there is now a distinction between deterioration, which is in our current bill, a current lower bill, and that's changed to acute deterioration of downtown Pittsburgh. And so that's we're making this for downtown. We will make sure that there's a distinction between these bills. This would create a new chapter, and so we want to make sure that we're giving language in that direction. We also added data in the recitals. The first full 4 recitals on page 2. that pertain to additional news about reassessments that occurred in downtown since the introduction of this bill. Third, added the, I'm going to skip that one because that's just redundant about how we added the word acutely. For the addition of the full-time equivalent employee definition, work with Councilperson Warwick on this. I think, initially I thought that this was necessary in a separate bill because there is definitely a lot of coordination between the mayor's new office of equal protection and also our controller's office, because this term FTE, full-time equivalent, is across all a lot of different ordinances that we have and different codes we have in the city, and quite frankly in our current LRTA. It's not currently defined, and so it can't accurately be discussed. But it's important to identify that and include that in this bill as just like a starting point for a larger conversation. Deleted language referring to parking definitions of the converted residential portion and the new construction for commercial residential use. And this was also offered up by Councilperson Warwick. This amendment was also mentioned in public comment, so this is definitely something that we need to make sure that we're not prioritizing parking. Well, I'm not aware of any projects that would add parking. There's current overabundant supply of parking downtown. Being on the chair of the parking board, we're at least at 3/4 capacity right now. So happy to take more people to park in our parking lots. Also wanted to make sure that we are changing the clause to allow for potential expansion of the enhanced LRTAs in the timeline for legislative action in the state level. That is extremely important since we look at other cities and they see the need to actually continue with the amount of time the abatement can take place. Right now, Senator Fontana is putting forward an effort to expand the length that the state would allow cities of our kind to have that tax abatement in place for. We also adjusted the tier measurement for the FTE job creation under the enhanced LRTA and deleted the 85% exemption tier in this section. So if you recall, the current LRTA is it requires 50 jobs in the enhanced section, and that's it. So you got 50 jobs, you create 50 full-time equivalent jobs or more, and then you would get the enhanced LRTA. I think a better policy would be to provide this tier so that it was already in place, but in the current bill. But this amendment clarifies and gives a range instead of just a number. So it's 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and then 15 above. We also wanted to speak to the biggest ask here, which was to provide an affordability component that would match what our housing needs assessment is. And that is to put 10%, to require 10% of all units that would be created, that there would be 50% AMI. Now, this is for the enhanced version. So if the developer or the investors, they would go for the enhanced version, and they were going to build, to build housing instead of jobs, they would get 100% of the abatement for 10 years if they provided this affordability. And then, what this conversation has been, this is the same level that's been championed by the URA and the administration at the county and the city, and this is our current top tier. Because I created another tier which was in the current bill. Well, it was actually at the top, and so to provide the range that goes up to 80%, so 51% to 80% AMI is definitely a range that we need to speak to, because when we talk about, let's take for example service workers, they make slightly above, slightly, or they're in the next tier, the next range, above 50% AMI. So we need to speak to that, and so that's why that range will provide 90% of the abatement for 10 years to the to build housing downtown. And that is I know there are some lengthy amendments, and I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to those amendments. But just want to make clear that affordability is at the top of this. Multiple people were speaking to that. We want to make sure that we're sending a signal to Harrisburg that we are interested in making an improvement in downtown, not only to keep our tax base, but also to make sure that downtown's a place where everyone can live. And with that, I have no further comments right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilperson Warwick.
Yeah, thank you. So I do want to start by saying I appreciate the concerns downtown, right? With the pandemic and the shift to work from home is hitting the owners of our office buildings hard, and I recognize that, and I appreciate that. Also, when it comes to complicated legislation like this, right, where lots hangs in the balance, I don't like to just say no out of hand, right? When there are, when there is some value to be had. I will say that I have some other amendments, some of which are conflicting with these amendments, but we can get to those after. As this bill is written now, including the amendments, there is no requirement to build any housing downtown, affordable or otherwise. Period. The way this bill is written now, you could do commercial, you could do a rehab for commercial use, whatever that may be. It could be a hotel, it could be a gym, it could be a skate park, it could be whatever you want. All you'd have to create is 50 jobs, which is not a lot of jobs, right? That's like one target, right? A medium-sized hotel, that's 50 jobs. It's not a lot of jobs. And you would get 100% abatement for 10 years on the new value, on the increased value of the building. That is what this bill says that is in front of us. Now there's the option to do affordable housing, the option to do 50% AMI, but you don't have to. It's just an option. And this new amendment undercuts that by providing an additional option where for 90% abatement, you could just do 80% AMI and still get 90% of your taxes abated for 10 years. So, as a city, we are investing millions of dollars into affordable housing. Affordable housing is our greatest need right now. Everyone is in agreement on this across the city. And yet we are offering to developers to invest, to give away millions of tax dollars to developers with zero requirement that they produce any housing at all. So, I mean, I am such a hard no on this. I cannot underscore it enough. I would like to see, and this is in the amendment that will follow. And by the way, the amendment that will follow also doesn't ask a lot. But the amendment that will follow will, first of all, for the standard abatement, and let me explain the standard abatement. The standard abatement is 50% off your tax bill, and right now for 10 years. For just doing a project, any project, right? No jobs, no housing. So that's the standard. So you can take the standard and already get half off and do whatever you want. I would like to limit that. I think we should limit that to 3 years with the understanding that we are doing this. We are presenting this bill. Councilman Wilson is presenting this bill because this is an emergency, because downtown is facing an emergency today. So I think that we should recognize the emergency in this bill and limit the application period to 3 years. You want to get this tax break? You want to do a project downtown and get half off your taxes, or maybe 100% off your taxes? You better do it today. You better do it. You better get started right now and get that application in. You have 3 years, not 10 years. And then if in 3 years' time we're still in the midst of this crisis, in the midst of this emergency, then great, we can extend it, right? It'll come back up. This will be more or less the same council we have today. We can extend it and
Less, definitely less.
So that is one recommendation that is in the amendments to come, is to limit the application period to 3 years. And the other big recommendation that is different from what we're discussing now is that there is a cap on the amount of abatement that we will give for commercial development. It's a very generous cap of 1.7 million in the first year, 1.7 some in the second year, 1.8 in the third year, which would be a total of 5.29 million in abatement. So to explain that, the idea is that if you want to do commercial projects, i.e. just any project that creates 50 jobs, you can apply, first come, first serve, and once we as a city, we as taxpayers, have given out 1.7 million in the first year, 1.7 in the next year, 1.8 in the third year, once we hit those marks of tax abatement, the tap is shut off and no more applications will be accepted for commercial. But if you're doing residential and it includes the affordability, then you can continue to apply. It's very reasonable. It is very, very reasonable. It's a high cap. $1.7 million in abatement is the equivalent of over $200 million worth of project. It's a very generous cap. So that is my way. And I shouldn't just say my way, because Councilman Coghill, Councilwoman Gross are also sponsoring these amendments. Their names aren't on here, but that was my mistake. That's a very generous way for us to put a slight requirement on the downtown developers to do housing and to do affordable housing. So my recommendation would be to vote no on these amendments, vote yes on the next amendments, and I think then we can get to something that actually will benefit Pittsburghers across the board, right? Because I love the idea. I love the idea of a residential downtown. I love the idea of a downtown, a transit hub where you can come, all types of people of all income levels can live and work. I think that is great, but that is not what we are going to get with this bill that is in front of us. At best, we will get exclusively luxury condos, at best. And we may not get any housing at all, because it is extremely expensive to convert office buildings into housing. It is extremely complicated. And with this bill in front of us, you do not need to do a single apartment. You can do strictly commercial. That is allowed. Maybe they won't, maybe they will, but it is allowed. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kell Smith.
I'm hoping we can cut the conversation short, because I think that there's a lot to be said still. There's a lot to be to have conversations. I think it'd be helpful to sit down, all of council sitting down with the administration, with the downtown partnership, and all the vested, and I know Councilman Wilson did do this during one of the briefings. He did bring everyone together. But I think it'd be helpful now that we have something in front of us, amendments in front of us. First of all, I want to know what the plan really is for downtown. I want to see downtown thriving. I want to see jobs. I want to see upscale and affordability. I want to see everything. I want to see a mix of everything. But I also want us to work together and come up with and work together and understand what the vision for downtown really is, and to make sure that we're doing what's best for the area, that by having real conversation. This is so important. It's not just let's just have this conversation, let's throw amendments on the table and vote it and be done. This is something that deserves a public hearing, some public comment, some meetings downtown, some meetings with other people, with our residents that we serve, with our unions. I think there's a lot of people that need to be at the table, including council and the administration together. So I think that I would hope that we would hold today for maybe 2 weeks, start having some of those meetings and be done. So we're not voting on any, because what if these amendments are the ones when we're all done that people do want? So I think that, and I think Councilman Wilson and Councilman Lavelle and the leadership could, arrange those meetings. If I think that people would be happy to. They both represent downtown, so I think it would be helpful to have those kinds of conversations.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I signed on to Councilwoman Warwick's amendments, and we really dug in the last week or so since this bill has been on the table. And I did attend the briefing with the stakeholders who are supporting the kind of unrestricted, really commercial and hotel abatement, an abatement higher than we've ever offered, right? So to be clear, it's not capped at how many tax dollars your individual project can be abated, nor is it capped at how many of these abatements we might hand out, right? There's just an unlimited, we're just offering up an unlimited amount of subsidy, really, for an incentive for commercial and hotel development. I think Councilwoman Warwick made it really clear how there's just really no actual guarantee in the way that Councilman Wilson's original bill, nor in Councilman Wilson's amendment, provides any balance between residential and hotel development. There's literally a conflated definition, and I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the definition section where kind of unlike any of the LRTAs we've ever had for the city of Pittsburgh, there's a muddled merger called commercial residential. Well, if you're a hotel, you're not housing, right? If you're building a hotel, you're really actually not building housing. And housing and hotels are not equivalents. And we shouldn't muddle them. We shouldn't try to merge them as a definition. And that's what I see as like a really bad policy, backdoor loophole. And I think it's unnecessary, and it is unfortunate, and absolutely needs to be removed in any one of these amendments. Because for any incentive that we try to encourage for housing, it just lets hotels get the same abatement. So there's no way that we can incentivize housing and be sure that we're going to get it. We don't have it in any of our other LRTA programs, and we shouldn't have it here. And it is not in Councilwoman Warwick's amendments, but it is in Councilman Wilson's. So again, doesn't matter if it's standard, doesn't matter if it's enhanced, doesn't matter if it's 50% of your taxes that are abated or 100% of your taxes are abated. It doesn't matter if it's a 3-year abatement or a 10-year abatement. It doesn't matter if you're capped at $250,000 or not capped at $250,000. For every single incentive that we try to make residential more appealing than commercial, they get that. And that needs to be taken out. So I am also cannot vote for the Wilson amendments that were just put in front of us. I'm also struggling to see that parking is actually excluded. And it is very clearly excluded in the Warwick, Gross, Coghill amendments that we have not, aren't technically discussing yet. And this is really important. You've heard, I think, we all concur that we have vacancy downtown. And so every time you hear that there's 30% vacancy in office buildings, I think to myself that means there's also a 30% vacancy in parking structures, right? Because when we had 100 or 150,000 people commuting to downtown or coming to downtown every day, thankfully a lot of them came by transit, but a lot of them came and had parking garage leases. And so there's a vacancy in parking structures. It's also important for the public to understand, because I know we've got some really well-versed students of zoning out there, that there is absolutely no parking requirement for downtown. So there's 100% offset is technically the way it is in our code book. So in another neighborhood, you might need to build, one parking space for one dwelling unit, but downtown you absolutely do not. So if you're building 500 apartments, you can build 0 parking spaces. And so why should we offer an incentive for parking construction? It's absolutely antithetical to everything we've talked about over many years in the city. We should not be inducing more cars. There is no bigger transit hub in Allegheny County than downtown Pittsburgh. Literally every mode brings you downtown. It's a hub and spoke system. Every bus line comes to downtown. They all come downtown. Then you have to transfer, and that's actually one of the weaknesses of our transit system. If you're trying to get from Green Tree to Lawrenceville, you'd have to come downtown, get off your bus, wait for another bus, and then go to Lawrenceville. So it's where you literally already have parking available in empty parking structures, or you can more easily use just transit by living downtown than you can basically anywhere else. So I absolutely need to see a more stronger exclusion of parking. And since another topic is that we talk about the vacancy downtown, we talk about the problem with building valuations. I've brought it up myself. We've now got a weekly report from the county on which of the current property owners are already trying to have their property values discounted. And yet, in the couple of weeks that we've been discussing this, we've really gotten more information in kind of think tanks and in universities studying cities around the country, and we're not doing as bad as some other cities. We're in the middle of the pack, or maybe a little bit above the middle of the pack. And so when you really look at how many properties there are in First and Second Ward, I think there's well over 1,000. And when we had our briefing, I'll just say that there's really about 9 projects in the pipeline. There was maybe it struck out in Councilman Wilson's proposed whereas clauses that there may be more. And really, for the kinds of extremely high tax forgiveness or tax abatements that we're handing out, only the biggest properties can benefit because they're the only ones who could conceivably be spending, well over $30 million on their project. And so really, it seems like it boils down to maybe 30 out of 1,000 parcels that would actually benefit from these exorbitantly high levels. So for that and many reasons, I think we really need to look more carefully at what is it that we're trying to accomplish. What I would like the public and the stakeholders or property owners and this council to keep in front of us is really for downtown, to Councilman Smith's point, what is the plan we'd like to see? How many apartments would we benefit from being downtown? Is it 1,000? Is it 3,000? Is it 4,000 more than we have now? And similarly with hotel rooms. So I looked up, just kind of visit Pittsburgh general information, and if you combine, as they do, they combine a number for downtown, North Shore, and South Side as kind of like downtown area. And there's already 6,500 hotel rooms. So what are we looking at? Do we really need 1,000 more? Do we need 2,000 more? Why do we need to incentivize more than nearly $700 million of hotel construction, which is the limits that Councilwoman Warwick is putting in, kind of spread over 3 years, that some of the council members have objected to and taken back out and aren't proposing and don't want any limits. We can't limit it, they say. No limits on commercial and hotel construction. Why? Do we need 20,000 more hotel rooms? Why is it, if it's good policy and it's reasonable and realistic, that there's some number that we can all agree would be good to incentivize, well, then it's okay to put it in the legislation, right? You don't need to kind of insist that there's no limit to the amount of incentives that property owners should muscle the public into. So I kind of, on ethical grounds, object to that understanding. So again, I can't support Councilman Wilson's amendment, and I'll stop there for first round. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Charlin.
Thank you. So a couple things here that I wanted to talk about. I am supportive of Councilman Wilson's amendments here, and I've looked through and I appreciate all the work that has gone into preparing these amendments here. I think one of the things that maybe we might have a disagreement with here on council is what is a public good and what should we be financing using public funds to finance. My view is that thriving downtown is a public good, and it should be something that we are using public dollars to help make sure that we have a functioning downtown, that we have a downtown that works for residents and is a regional leader here. And I understand that we've talked a lot about city's finances, and a lot of this conversation is about the city's finances. But if downtown is 25% of the real estate market, or the real estate taxes, it is in our interest to make sure that it stays 25%. With this LRTA, we won't be adding to downtown necessarily, but we won't be losing in downtown. And we need to be laser focused on making sure that we are not losing the real estate tax income from downtown that we have currently. Downtown will have to reinvent itself, and we're working on reinventing it right now, but we want to make sure that we're driving every dollar of investment into downtown that we can, and we're not losing dollars in downtown, which is our fear here. Councilman Wilson and I have talked a lot about this long and hard here, and one of the things that I've said is that I don't want to see these I don't want to see the LRTA program here watered down. In fact, I'm not sure that it's even big enough, because we are at a time here where we can't look. We don't want to be in a position where 10 years from now we're looking back at downtown and saying, I wish we would have done more. If it ends up in a situation where there are too many hotels being built downtown, I think I know the market will correct for that. That's the point there. And people that come to downtown and stay in hotels are people that are spending money. These are tourists or other people there. These are people that we want to bring into downtown. I don't see a fear of any world where we end up building too many hotels that the market can't support. Folks that are on development teams aren't going to just choose to build something the market doesn't support. These aren't people building on whims here. I understand that we have to be concerned about affordable housing, and I've heard from a handful of members that affordable housing needs to be our number one concern, and it is on this council. We are concerned about the cost of housing affordability and what that looks like. However, no one policy is going to be the policy that solves all of our problems and is the panacea that solves all the issues in the city and in the region here. This is a good bill. This are good amendments that will help keep downtown from cratering, and I think that is our that is the purpose of this bill, and I think it's something that we should all support here. I personally have concerns that I've talked to Councilman Wilson about. I wish there was stronger language in this about labor, about the prevailing wage. I think that's something that we would love to get to. Unfortunately, we're legally not allowed to put more language around an abatement because this is not an incentive. It's an abatement on taxes. That said, we know that other projects, in order to assemble a capital stack that can make these projects viable, will include other incentives that will have prevailing wage language. So the projects that we want to see coming to downtown will also have the things that we're looking for in terms of prevailing wage and making sure that we're creating good jobs there. The last thing that I just want to say is that 50 jobs is a lot. I think this is the first, working for the city of Pittsburgh is the first job that I've ever had where I've had more than 50 coworkers. So, to really think about what that means to have creating 50 jobs, it's bigger than just, a small, small shops there. We're adding to the economy when we're adding 50 jobs downtown. So, with those remarks, I just want to say that I'm fully in support of this. And, the only thing that I wish we could do is go bigger here. So thank you, Councilman Wilson. I appreciate your leadership here.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I first want to say, I appreciate the efforts of Councilman Wilson in this. I also appreciate the efforts of Councilwoman Warwick. And I would be lying to you to say if I knew the right formula here. I think it still needs to be worked out, some things. And my hope is that we don't vote on any of these today. I hope we take a week and shuffle through what's right, what's wrong, what's good for development, what's good for the developers, what's good for housing, what's good for the city in general. I think some things need to be ironed out, and that's why I signed on to Councilwoman Warwick's amendments today, because she brings up some valid concerns. I will say this, from the beginning, my main objective and my strongest point as to why I can't support it is because of the lack that we cannot have prevailing wage in there for our local labor unions. When we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of renovations going in downtown, for me and for the building trades, it's very important that those jobs are secured by the men and women who work for our building trades, so that money stays in the city of Pittsburgh and in our region. As it is now, I don't know who owns most of these skyscrapers. I can't tell you. I know our local developers I trust. They, I think, know what's best for them, and using our local labor force is in their interest. But I can't say that if somebody's from Houston or Texas and around the world probably as to who's going to be doing these developments. We got a lot of opinion. I appreciate Councilman Wilson working with me from the Department of Labor and Industry that stated that, as Councilman Charlin said, we cannot include that into the cost of any of these developments. And that's upsetting to me, because without that, I feel always lost. If we can't guarantee that the people in the city of Pittsburgh are doing this work, we need to go back to the drawing board. I have a couple suggestions I'll be making. I hope over the next week that we have to talk about this and try to find an avenue that we can guarantee that this work is being done by our local labor unions. So for me, that was always my concern. It's still my main concern. I know the administration has things they would like to see. Councilwoman Warwick has turned in her amendments. I know Councilman Wilson has adjusted his original bill to be amended to, I hope, satisfy, or start to get to the point where we could satisfy everybody's needs. So with that, I'm not prepared to vote on it today. I would like to see a 1 week hold. I would like to see the administration, Councilwoman Warwick, Gross, myself, and Wilson go back to the drawing board and figure out the best way moving forward where this could work for everybody. So with that, as it stands, again, without prevailing wage, that means that people from all over the country will have the ability to bring their own workers in and bypass our local workforce that we so dearly count on. Our big part of our tax base is our local labor unions. So it's important that they are factored into this. As it sits now, we know we can't do it legally, but I think we can find a loophole over the next week where we could try to work in. So that's it for me, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments for first round? Councilman Mosley.
Yeah, I want to thank all my colleagues for their very thoughtful words this morning. As we know, this is, a very challenging issue, and I do want to echo the thoughts of Councilwoman Kel Smith and Councilman Coghill. It does feel, a bit rushed. Like, I think it does, seem to me, at this moment that it would be the prudent thing to do is to take some time and bring the various interests together, and find out where our common interests lie. I do think it's very important that, we do, move forward with the work of addressing, the acute issue, of, what's happening, with the buildings downtown and balance those with our needs, for, our, affordable housing issue. To borrow a word from Councilwoman Groves, I think you said, our moral, our moral challenge here in the city. And I do feel that if we took another week, we could sit down, and find, some common interests, as a sponsor, of this bill. I do want to thank, Councilman Wilson, for his leadership on it. And I look forward to continue working with him of moving, this legislative vehicle forward. But, at this moment, it does just seem that where we're at as a body, the prudent thing to do is to bring the variety of stakeholders together. I even, said this after the very timely briefings that Councilman Wilson, and his, wonderful chief of staff, Mohammed Bernie, put together those two briefings. Even coming out of those 2 1-hour briefings, I felt that, it really wasn't enough, time, and I mentioned that to them, afterwards. I think we need more time. I think we potentially, even need some sort of a working group of various stakeholders from council, from the mayor's office, from the URA, even the housing authority, since we're talking so much about project-based vouchers, being part of the solution to this. I think moving forward, I think, we really need to look at potentially having a working group to really solve this, and not to kick the can down the road. Because, as in my conversations, with Councilman Wilson, I know, he's, very enthusiastic about moving this forward and showing folks at the state level and showing other stakeholders that we're serious about this. So this is not, to pause this to kick the can down the road, because I do think we have to move expeditiously. But I just feel this where this council is at right now. I feel that it may be the most prudent thing to do is to wait, a week, bring the groups together, even look at having some sort of a working group that's serious, that wants to move expeditiously to really solve this, so that we can really balance the various interests around the table.
Thank you. Council President Lavelle.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Excuse me. One, I just want to make sure colleagues understand that this is not sort of fly-by-night, legislation, that there have been conversations with the various downtown stakeholders, with the administration, with the URA, even going back to last year, about how to move this forward appropriately. So I just want to make sure colleagues understand this has been done with intentionality. With that being said, having spoken to members over the course of the last few days, even as late as rather late last night, speaking with various members, I understand the willingness to try to get to more of a compromise. And so I am willing to support. One member suggested a 2-week hold. I'm not supportive of a 2-week hold. I would ask that we, if anything, have a 1-week hold and then immediately get to work. I do want to caution members that I don't think we're going to come up with a perfect bill. I don't believe we're going to come up with the bill that makes everyone 100% happy. because the reality is, and I think it was Councilman Charlin who said, this bill will keep downtown from tanking, I think was his language. And unfortunately, it actually won't. It's one tool in the box to do so, but it alone will not do that. And there is a need to get to Harrisburg immediately. And moving this bill will signal that this city and this body is acting appropriately, and that others need to do so as well. And so we need to move expeditiously. What I will also say is, first and foremost, this bill and the purpose of uncapping the LRTA is to, first and foremost, sort of stabilize or attempt to stabilize our tax base, right? Now, whether or not that's done through a hotel, whether that's done through an apartment building, or whether that's done through a combination of uses can be up for debate. But the purpose is to allow for development to occur to stabilize the tax base. And again, I'm cautioning us that I don't think we're going to come to 100% agreement on the percentage of hotels, the percentage of office, the percentage of retail. But nonetheless, understand what this bill is intended to do, which is also, and Councilwoman Gross has said this both in briefings and she mentioned it today at the table, this bill is not designed for the $30 million project, right? This bill is designed for those larger developments in downtown that need that additional assistance to convert larger office buildings into something new and into something different. It is not designed to create the Target, right? That's not what this is. That Target doesn't need this to simply do that, right? They can access our current LRTAs to do that. With that being said, I will certainly work with all members to get to the greatest version of a compromise possible over the course of the next week. I would just ask that we all immediately get to work, because there is a need to get this passed quickly and soon. I will also suggest that Councilwoman Gross spoke about parking and being more intentional about getting parking out of the bill. I know Councilman Wilson did strike it. I think it was on page 5. But I don't want to speak for him, but I'm sure certainly he'd be willing to go back and do that in other places as well. Prevailing wage, as Councilman Coghill acknowledged, this does not trigger prevailing wage. It simply doesn't. But I think there are ways to write into the whereas clauses in other locations that it is our expectation that prevailing wage be used for these large developments. And I'm certainly we can work on language to address that as well. I think that's all for now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we move on to second round, I did want to take a moment to share a little bit about what is on my heart and on my mind right now as we've been having these conversations. And I'll start by really thanking the bill sponsor, Councilman Wilson, those who have worked on an amendment, an alternative amendment, and that's Councilperson Warwick, Councilwoman Gross, Councilman Coghill. And everyone who I've spoken to almost every member about this at some point or another. Backing up a little bit, I think that, I'll reiterate what I said at the initial press conference, which is what we all recognize. We cannot allow downtown to flail or to fail. We need to there's a limited amount to what council is able to do to make a transformation happen, but we have to do everything possible. And, I have heard some actually say, I don't think this is a discussion around this table, but some say they actually just don't agree with Alerta at all. It's the wrong tool. I think it's the most progressive thing that we can do. We as council members who represent districts across the city will not be able to have the finances, the money to be able to keep our rec centers open, have our public safety centers remain staffed, have farmers markets and senior centers be able to be open and staffed. So to be able to have the service, to be able to provide the services that we want to provide, we have to do everything in our power. Now, Alerta is a small piece of that, and that is why I know that there are downtown convenings. I know that, of course, those council members who represent downtown have been attending. I think it would be, in addition to having, longer term discussions outside of this bill, I think it would be wise for us to have those conversations and to understand where this fits into the larger picture. I think it'd be great if we could be, if all council members could be invited to that downtown convening, at least one of those meetings, so we all understand what has already taken place and what conversations are in the mix, short, mid, and long term. So that's one thing. Back to the bill, back to the amendments. It also strikes me that we all want the same thing. We're just finding different ways to get there. We all want a downtown where multiple people can find different types of housing for families, for individuals at different price points, to have a walkable, vibrant downtown. We might disagree on whether we need more hotels or to what extent to be able to attract more business, but we all want jobs. We all want, good paying jobs, labor union jobs, and we all want a vibrant, thriving downtown. And, whether that's done through a carrot or an incentive program or through a stick, a mandate, that's a sticking point for sure. For me personally, I do understand very much, and I do feel that when a lot is, to quote one of our public commenters today, when much is given in the form of tax abatements, a lot is expected, right? And the public benefit that we get should be significant. And that can come in the form, certainly, of affordability, that can come in the form of jobs. And I also understand that, I guess, on the other side of that, my fear is that it doesn't become then a choice of between truly, affordable housing versus luxury versus hotels, that it becomes, if it's not done right, that it becomes a choice between affordable housing and nothing at all, because they just can't make the project work. They just can't get the gap finance to make the project work. That is my fear. And before I commit to any of these amendments, I'd like to continue to explore how these projects can really, truly work, how they can make the numbers work, so that we're not unintentionally left with empty office towers that haven't been converted, that haven't been developed. So that is what I'm looking to dig into and learn more about and get answers to over the next week. I look forward to, it sounds like some of my colleagues are there with me in exploring various ways to do that and to get these answers and to get the numbers, but that's what would make me feel more comfortable. I'll just finish by saying, we all wish we had a crystal ball in this circumstance, because that's what would actually tell us, what we can expect from various developers and various entities, but we don't, so we have to do the best we can with the tools we have, and I know that we will, but that's where I am right now. So thank you for indulging me. I wanted to say that before we moved on to any kind of additional motions. And moving on to second round, Councilman Wilson is up first, followed by Councilperson Warwick, followed by Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I truly want to thank everyone for, their comments. And I've been sitting here thinking pretty deeply about what's been discussed here. I just want to start off by saying that I only got involved with writing a bill that would give such a large tax abatement because if we just take the obvious, that we keep the current taxes that we currently get, we don't lose that, we would be forgiving on that renovation after the reassessment, what that delta of that reassessment. So, and the taxes that would be paid on that amount. If we take all that into account, the only reason that I think this is so critical is that we move quickly on this is that we know it costs 20 to 30% more to renovate these structures, to convert these structures. Even office space looks different. So even if someone's going to renovate as an office space, we know that there's other amenities that are needed in that environment. So whether it's a daycare, whether it's some other sort of healthcare at the bottom level or in the middle. There are different combinations here that are even needed for commercial office space. So just given that there's so much more money required to convert these structures, should signal to all of us that this is a huge crisis. That literally downtown didn't have any residential in our past. It was only for office space. We're behind times, even when we look back at the 80s. I mean, there was all these different cities currently now that are looking at these tax abatements that are far greater than what we're even discussing here, and they have cranes in the air. You go to Cleveland, they got cranes in the air. It's happening. You go to other cities, cranes in the air. So are we just gonna? I'm not saying everyone's. We're all on the same page. We're all on the same page here, but my point is that there's a big need to do something, and that's the only reason why I started down this path. I think what I'm hearing is the critique on the LRTA, which everyone's referring to my bill or the amendment, is really a critique of the original program. The original program allowed for commercial residential use. This wasn't a section that was added. So there was always a commercial residential use. This was the original LRTA, which is citywide. Those categories weren't changed. Yes, I understand that there is an amendment here that wants to separate that out, but I mean, the fact lies that there's nothing widely different happening here other than it's uncapped. So, we sat down and we discussed the parking, and this seems to be an issue I see. And I never received, this paper. So if I received it by this morning, I would have directed my staff to, added whatever language we have in here to fully eliminate that parking would be some sort of benefit. But just want to clarify that, when we talk about the bill and the amendments, I've been talking to everyone. No one here can say that I haven't been intimately involved in every conversation, and making sure that we're setting up briefings, I'm setting up conversations with people. I'm literally adding and taking things out. The amendment that I see here doesn't add or do anything for all these discussions that's been happening for the past 5 months that we've tried to relay to everyone and try and have that briefing to try and understand what the need is here. So I'm just saying that I'm sitting on the side of trying to figure out how we get to a place in this moment. And the need of the body right now is to hold for a week. That's fine. But when we come back and during this week, so during this week and then when we come back, I think the real desire here is to make something that still works. We can't show up with a bill that completely changes what's at the top, that's the where you get the most tax abatement at the top. Like in this bill, it's 100% because we're uncapping it. But we have now 3 bills at the school, at the PPS, and we have at the county that the job is commercial residential use, and all those chapters exist there too. And it is the requirement to have 50 jobs or more to get the highest tax abatement for commercial use. So we can't show Harrisburg that we are literally putting numbers on hotel rooms. It's just, we can't show Harrisburg that we are literally just evaluating, I would say, not enough. I mean, this could go on forever where we're literally evaluating every different structure and what use could be in it, and we're going to judge whatever they want to do with the structure. The point is that we speak to the affordable housing need, and that we speak to the need of workers who are currently working downtown to make sure they continue to have jobs. And we speak to the number one need is our tax base. I understand that there is there's a component here for the need for prevailing wage. But we all know that labor has supported past LRTAs because they require more additional funding that activates prevailing wage. RCAP, these larger projects most likely are not going to happen without an RCAP. That would trigger prevailing wage. URA funding. The URA has a conversion program right now. I'm not seeing anything. I'm happy to understand the briefing in terms of how that conversion program is going, but my understanding is that I'm not talking to representing downtown. I'm not talking to anyone that is currently taking advantage of that program, and my understanding is it has to be reworked. When it's reworked, it'd be great to include that so that they would match the amendments or the current bill or the amendments, whatever you want to see it, that the final bill has a way that we can put public funding into our URA funding into affordable housing through this LRTA program. Or not through the program, but you understand that they would eventually have to seek the funding to pencil out these projects. Because that's the most important thing, is that not only are we doing all these three things I mentioned, but the other one is to make sure that people are making a good wage in Pittsburgh and they have good union jobs. So with that, looking forward to conversations with many more conversations with my colleagues, as I have been, and I'm looking forward to coming next week with a bill that we can pass, and we can all agree on something where we're actually gonna make this one tool to save downtown. This is not gonna be the magic potion that makes it all work. There's gonna be several other steps that have to happen. And I've been discussing with members on how we should be monitoring that. We need a real time, just like we have in real time, we can see what the bridge, what the bridge grades are. We need to see that in real time so that members here on this side of the table can understand who's applying for the LRTA, what part of the LRTA are they applying for, and how's it working, how many more foreclosures are happening. So I like to work with our IMP department to make sure that we're providing a map with dots on the map so that we actually understand clearly what's happening. Because I think if we see an actual visual of what's happening and how people are taking advantage of the program and working with applying for other programs, whether it's RCAP, we see the need and what the struggles are to really pencil out these projects. I had the opportunity to, I don't know why I'm going to tell this story, but I had the opportunity to go to D.C. For 2 days. That's why I took council. By phone last week. My daughter wanted to see, one of the things that she wanted to see was the Library of Congress. She's 9 years old. They said something about it in school, and she wants to go see it, so we went there. There was an exhibit about the great photography of American photographers, and they continually just described how there's moments in, this is not, this isn't the Civil Rights Act here. We're trying to save downtown, but the point is that they kept speaking to how images move us, and obviously we're a very visual society, and all these different photographs change time. So that's why I speak to the need of an actual visual, so we can actually see what's going on here. Everyone wants to see the numbers. Everyone wants to talk about the numbers. It's actually a struggle to get the numbers. There's a lot of talk about how easy it is to get a voucher and use it on within these different projects. I'd love to see it. Especially with current applications for LRTA or past applications for LRTA, since it is at the top tier requirement or to get the most tax abatement. I'd love to see it, and I think that we could probably get some numbers around that within this week. But I think a real visual would help all of us, because this isn't going away, and that's why we shouldn't reduce it to a 3-year window. We need a 10-year window because we need to continually monitor it. There hasn't been a LRTA bill that had actual audits that have correctly, accurately transpired what's happening. FTE's never been defined. we never had it in the language that the controller would actually audit it on an annual basis. And so this bill does that. It did that before the amendment. So furthermore, to create that visual, I think would help all of us in this conversation. We continually seek information because this is probably the most complex bill that I've worked on since on council, and also just been a part of any of these conversations. It's the most complex conversations I've been a part of since being on council. So looking forward to the discussion. I believe the action is I withdraw my motion to amend.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to withdraw the motion to amend. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then
Motion passes. We do have a couple of others who wish to speak on second round, though.
I have one sentence to say.
Mm-hmm.
If the body allows, I'm not sure, Robert's rules here, but if it come back to me, I'd like to make a motion to hold for 1 week, whenever we'd like to do that.
Okay, thank you. So we will table that idea. I wanted to go then back to first round on the bill itself to allow for Councilperson Warwick and Councilwoman Gross to make some comment.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, I do want to say again, I definitely appreciate the amount of effort that has gone into this bill by Councilman Wilson's team and the councilman himself. I do think maybe just for all of us, perhaps as a learning experience. We're so often used to doing bills that, just affect something in our district or whatever, and for the most part, other members are like, yeah, that's fine, whatever, that's your district. No, but big things, complicated things like this, in addition to, talking with the folks in the neighborhood, in this case, the developers, Downtown Partnership, and the, various legal teams, it also those long-term discussions should also include other members, because these are tax implications that affect the entire city. So any large-scale bill that's going to affect all of us citywide in terms of tax revenue is, it's important. I think that before a bill is introduced, we all have a chance to weigh in. That might simplify things, I do want to say that in this coming week, I'm glad that we're holding in this coming week. One thing that would be very helpful to have is, some of these, because everything I've heard so far has been anecdotal, right? I have not seen any concrete reports about the vacancy rates, et cetera, who's being foreclosed on. I haven't seen anything about plans that are of these buildings that have plan. Like what are the plans? What do these building owners want to do? What are they looking at doing? We haven't heard any specifics about any of that. That would be helpful, right, in us crafting a bill that helps downtown building owners do what they want to do, but also, gets us what we need to get, which is, in my opinion, the housing. Another thing, when we talk about the dropping tax revenue is a concern, but I really want to underscore for the public that all of these building owners who are coming hat in hand to council asking for this giant abatement to do new projects are also appealing their current assessments. So they are also, they are coming to us saying, no, we don't want to actually pay you the taxes that you think we owe you. We're going to take you to court and we are appealing those. So keep that in mind, right? So when, and there's nothing in this bill that I can see that specifically says that the taxes we say you owe today are the taxes that you will continue to pay, because those appeal processes are ongoing. So that's just another thing for the public to note. I do want to say, Councilman Charlin, you said let's just see how many hotels let the market work it out. If we let the market work it out, we just let these buildings foreclose. That would be the market working it out. Yes, that would just be no subsidies, whatever. We just we don't intervene, we just let the market work it out. And let whatever happens, happens, and hopefully it all goes okay. So when we say that we want to make sure that we're doing the right amount of hotels, the hotels that we need, the housing that we need, that is us creating a tool. As we've said, this is a tool in the toolbox among many, but this is our tool. This is our taxpayers' tool. So we want to get for the investment that we are making, that the people of Pittsburgh are making, we want to get the things that the people of Pittsburgh need out of these downtown projects. You know, and I hope that we can get to a place where we can create an abatement that then combined with the URA program, combined with whatever else. And also it should be noted that with these URA programs, if we had the incentive to do affordable housing, that would create the incentive to go for the affordable housing credits that then would trigger the prevailing wage requirement, right? So if we had the affordable housing requirement in here, that would then force these projects to go and look for those other monies that would then trigger our prevailing wage for our unions. And, you know, and then finally, just one last reminder, because I feel like it's worth saying, you can get to 50% AMI with vouchers and not lose really any money at all, right? These days, the voucher program has, you know, the amount that you can get with a voucher is very close, you know, is market rate, so that you could do your 50%, 10%, 50%, 10% affordable units at 50% AMI by simply working with HUD and accepting vouchers, so that folks, which would be a huge benefit because we have so many voucher holders that can't find apartments. So that would be a net win for everybody. So, you know, yet again, if we put that requirement in there, that's a way that it could be met. At any rate, thanks everybody. I know that this has been a tough one, and I appreciate everybody's time. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the sponsor withdrawing his motion to amend so that we can have a more productive conversation, and I thank everybody for being willing to have that conversation for the next week. I just want to speak really quickly to one point that President Lavelle made in his comments, that the Lavelle original draft and proposed amendments kind of just strike out the word parking, which is not good enough. To just not speak to it just leaves it absent. And so what is needed, if we are concur, and I do believe there is broad consensus that we should not be giving tax abatements for new parking garages, is that it needs to be positively, verbally excluded, right? There needs to be excluding parking language, and it can't just be a vacuum and unspoken to in the document. So I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that. And I do want to just reiterate that I think the important conversation that needs to be had over the next week, to expound on Councilwoman Warwick's point, is that, you know, what is the goal for downtown? Saving the buildings is, you know, some perspective. Saving the building owners from, you know, foreclosure is one perspective. But my perspective is that we also need to think about the downtown that we're incentivizing. And the downtown that we want to see come to fruition. And so we have been saying for many years that we want to incentivize housing. We've had recent post agendas about incentivizing housing. And so let's incentivize housing. So I will maintain that backdoor loophole, brand new definition that we've never seen used before in the city of Pittsburgh needs to also be removed. That hotels are not housing. And housing is not hotels. And so you can't, by this new language that's in both the original bill and in the Wilson Amendment that muddles them, that needs to be corrected so that there are clear paths and the public can see and the council can see and everyone can speak to what incentives are being put in place for housing and what incentives are being put in place for hotels. So the data after the fact would be welcome, but also let's incentivize what we say we want. If this is a bill to incentivize residential conversions downtown, then let's not have backdoors in it, and let's make it a bill to incentivize downtown residential construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson.
I just want to make sure that I'm just not being misunderstood here. That, once again, like what I'm hearing about the parking, I'm not sure why this seems like a distraction at this point, but should really look at the current LRTA, the citywide, and what's at the county and the schools. Like I'm not trying to build parking garages here. I'm not sure what's going on with the rhetoric around parking. I already talked about how if I deleted it based on our conversation, and then if I'd received this earlier today, would have done it. But that's not something we added initially anyway. So I'm not sure why this is a topic. We all agree on that. We could definitely move on from that. But I just want to make sure that the narrative isn't that this bill is somehow trying to incentivize more parking. That's just not the case. And then also, this bill is really a bill that is trying to provide a tool to keep our current 25% real estate tax base, and that's it. Like, other than that, I mean, that's the primary focus. And so I also just want as we talk about what this bill's trying to do, that's all it's trying to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill, second round.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just first want to say, before coming to council, I didn't realize about our affordable housing crisis, I will tell you. After 6.5 years being at this table, I certainly realize it. And I see it in my own community now. It wasn't there, when I started on this council, but right now everybody's being priced out in Beachview, Brookline, pretty much my entire district. So I recognize it now, and I'm in tune to it. And I know this council has done a lot of work around it over the past so many years. But I want to reference what Councilwoman Warwick was saying, and one of the main reasons why I signed on to your amendments was back to the prevailing wage. The only way that we can guarantee that our local workers are doing this, what we hope to be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of renovations. It'll be fantastic if it works out that way. But the only way we can guarantee it is if they take a subsidy. So, and to take a subsidy, whether it be from the state, the federal government, or the URA, most likely the URA, is going to be around affordable housing. So that's one of the main factors as to why I'm supporting Councilwoman Warwick's amendments, because the emphasis on affordable housing will guarantee that these jobs stay in the Pittsburgh region, that our electricians, boilermakers, steam fitters, and so on, carpenters, will be doing this work. I hope we can find a way around it other than just hoping that they take the affordable housing initiative and take the money from the city. But as it is right now, that's the only way we can guarantee that work. So I just want to reemphasize the fact that more affordable housing built into this will guarantee jobs for our local labor unions so that they will do it, because they're the ones that are going to be coming to the city for, funds to complete their project. Outside that, we're still looking. I'm still going to try. There are other avenues, I think, that we can guarantee that our workers do this work. But for me, again, I just want to emphasize the main point for me is that our local workforce does these renovations. They're running out of work. The power plants and things like that, that's what they usually work on. They're built. This is a way that they can guarantee work for years and years. So we have to find a way in order to guarantee prevailing wage, and that our local building trades do that work. So thank you.
Thank you. Second round, Council President Lavelle.
Just sort of a point of clarity. One, I agree with Councilman Coghill 100% that we want our local unions doing this work. 100% agreed. But just for the record, even prevailing wage doesn't guarantee that happens, right? So we can't, and there's no way to legally put in this bill prevailing wage. So I just want to sort of level set. Also, relative to sort of the affordable housing discussion, currently in the bill, if you get up to 100% of the extended LRTA, you have to go down to 50% AMI. For one household, that's $35,150. For two households, that's $40,200 at 50% AMI. The bill contemplates going up as high as 80% AMI. At 80% AMI, a single-family household is $56,250, and a two-family household is $64,250. So I just want members to sort of, as we discuss the affordable housing piece of this, understand what those numbers actually are. Thank you.
Thank you. We've exhausted second round, third round. Councilman Wilson.
I feel bad doing this, but I just have to clarify when, I hear, Councilman Coggo, you said that you support that amendment because, that's more affordable housing. We offer the same incentive, for affordable housing. So the same incentive is built into, I believe you have 100% for the 100% abatement, you get 10% of 50% AMI. That's provided in my amendment. So I just want to make that clarification because that was put at the top of this bill, and it was always a priority to include affordable housing in this amendment. So I just want to make that clarification because I'm definitely not going to be on the side of a bill that wouldn't create more, union jobs. So just want to make that clear. Thanks.
Was there a motion to?
I'll make a motion to hold 1 week.
Second. Motion to hold 1 week, a second. All those in favor of a 1 week hold, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion to hold 1 week is approved. That moves us on to Bill 300.
Bill 300, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Diana Stefanson and her attorney Phillips and Smith DeLocke PC for a single payment in 2024 in an amount not to exceed $11,000 in full and final settlement of litigation filed in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by.
Oh, sorry. Motion to hold for, it was scheduled. Oh, we scheduled it.
Apologies, misunderstanding. We actually do need to hold it for an executive session, not just indicate that is occurring today. So, do I have a motion to hold for executive session?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor of an executive session, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Bill will be held for executive session. Bill 301.
Bill 301, resolution further amending resolution number 857 of 2023, effective December 27, 2023, as amended, entitled, Resolution adopting and approving the 2024 capital budget, the proposed 2024 community development program, and the 2024 through 2029 capital improvement program by increasing P.J. McCardle Railway Bridge over Hillside Tip by $750,000, increasing P.J. McCardle Railway Bridge over Sycamore Tip by $600,000, increasing Bloomfield Bridge Tip by $1,200,000, and increasing East Sycamore Street Bridge Tip by $600,000 to account for Federal Highway Administration funding being received at no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
With discussion.
With discussion, Councilwoman Kell Smith.
Thank you. I just want to make sure people understand at home that this is for McGardle Roadway, which is a lot of complaints we receive about the condition of it. So I'm very happy to see that the administration and the federal government are working towards making the repairs needed that we've been working on for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 311.
Bill 311, resolution transferring the amount of $10,000 within the 2024 operating budget from city council salaries and wages, regular to council as a body for the purpose of professional services.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion?
And no, just so people, this is just moving money from my salary to my professional development, that's all,
Any further discussion?
because I'm not using it.
Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to invoices.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving invoices, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Invoices are approved. That moves us to P cards. Do we have a motion to approve P cards?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of P cards, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
P cards are approved. That moves us to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, chaired by Councilperson Warwick.
Bill 302, resolution providing for a reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the P.J. McCardle Roadway Bridge over Sycamore project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $600,000, reimbursable at 100%. This resolution serves to authorize only the reimbursement agreement or agreements at no cost to the city of Pittsburgh. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 303.
Bill 303, resolution providing for a reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the P.J. McCardle Roadway Bridge over Hillside project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $750,000, reimbursable at 100%. This resolution serves to authorize only the reimbursement agreement or agreements at no cost to the city. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 304.
Bill 304, resolution providing for a reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the East Sycamore Street Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $600,000, reimbursable at 100%. This resolution serves to authorize only the reimbursement agreement or agreements at no cost to the city. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion?
Just brief discussion, I hope everybody knows the last few bills were in District 2, that's all. Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate you for all of this work that's
I
being
wanna
done in
thank
District
John
2.
for being so helpful.
It's big. It's a lot of big work. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 304, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 305.
Bill 305, resolution providing for a reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the Bloomfield Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $1,200,000, reimbursable at 100%. This resolution serves to authorize only the reimbursement agreement or agreements at no cost to the city of Pittsburgh. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreement.
Motion to approve, discussion?
Second.
Second discussion, Councilwoman
Domi
Gross.
team, come to the table.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, I was going to invite the director to the table, if you don't mind, or directors, to discuss this. First of all, because it's a bridge. Second of all, because it's the Bloomfield Bridge. And so I'll let the directors get seated, but I would like just to describe the project and let us know and the public know if this has anything to do with bridge maintenance, bridge repair, and especially in light of the Asset Management Committee reports. Thank you. Can you introduce yourselves?
Sure. Kim Lucas, Director for the City's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
Eric Setzler, Chief Engineer, Mobility and Infrastructure.
Thank you. So again, if you could speak to kind of like what are we doing the $1.2 million for, and tell us what kind of shape the bridge is in.
Sure. The Bloomfield Bridge is actually our largest bridge by the size of the deck, and it was built in the 80s. I'm sure some folks remember that, but it is still a bridge that's in pretty decent condition. And this is a preservation project, so the purpose of this project is to keep the bridge in relatively good condition versus letting it, degrade down to poor condition. So it's work that involves, for example, fixing, deteriorated concrete in the barriers, replacing the expansion dams, which are the things on the deck that allow movement, but inevitably sometimes leak and let water get down below. Concrete repairs on the piers, painting any steel that needs painted, those kinds of repairs to really just extend the life of the bridge.
Great. So what stuck in my brain, what you said was concrete repair, which is great, painting the steel, which is great, right? We've learned our lessons about water management on bridges. And I also heard you say about making sure that the water was channeling properly.
Correct.
All right, so that's all good because these were the lessons that we learned we'd not done in previous years, right? Director, do you want to add anything?
I think that's about it, and it's just a great signaling of how the city is taking a step forward with being able to invest in these more affordable types of projects before they get to those critical levels where the bridge is in poor condition and you're going to see a $57 million project like Charles Anderson. And so this is definitely a step in the right direction, and I'm grateful for the team, especially Deputy Director Jeff Scalligan and his work with the TIP to get projects like these on it.
Great, I appreciate it. And I just wanted us to be able to say that the bridge, I heard you say the bridge is currently in good condition. This is the maintenance that we should have been doing for many decades on all of our bridges in order to keep them in good condition, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, we just wanted to make sure I heard it that way and that we all have it that way on the record. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 305, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. Thank you. Bill 306.
Bill 306, resolution providing for a reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the City Steps project and providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $850,000, reimbursable at 80%, and a municipal share of Commonwealth incurred costs at a cost to the City of Pittsburgh not to exceed $10,000.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
With discussion, do we have a second?
So I just briefly, because I know City Steps are, near and dear to many people. So if just talk a little bit about what this design is doing and then also the steps that are involved.
Okay, sure. So this project actually originated out of some federal funding that we received through an earmark. So it is it's being designed, through kind of the PennDOT process that we use for a lot of our bridges and streets. So it's it'll be a relatively involved design process. This is to start the design work. We have 5 sets of steps on here, and our intent at this point, we will be studying them, but our intent is that most of them will be full replacements or significant upgrades. It's not for kind of repair work that would be not appropriate for this kind of money. The steps that we have on the list are Potomac Avenue, Clare Haven, Ottawa Street, Dixon Street, and 56th Street.
Okay.
And that'll be a several-year design project before we get to construction.
Councilman Coghill.
Did I hear Potomac Avenue?
You did.
Thank you, thank you. I know this is Councilwoman Kill Smith's district, so it's, before she bites my head off here, but I drive that every day. We're talking about the ones that jet out with the wooden rail, and we're going to put them back in the same spot, or are we going to try to move them in?
I don't have the answer for that, but that's something we'll be looking at.
Because they kind of, people scrape, they're protruding out into the roadway, but I was hoping that we had some agreement with the property owner there that we could, at least where the bend is. But I'm just so grateful. That's wonderful. I look at that every day and I hate it. But thank you. That's great. Thanks.
Any further discussion?
I've thanked him already. I don't want to keep doing it.
Yeah, I just want to thank you too. I mean, I just want to point out that our public steps are another form of bridges, and so the maintenance of those are they're like pedestrian bridges to get from neighborhood to neighborhood. So thank you for your investment here. With that, all those in favor of Bill 306, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you. That moves us on to Human Resources Committee chaired by Councilwoman Charlin.
Bill 322, Resolution further amending Resolution number 886 of 2021, effective December 27, 2021, as amended, entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2022 Capital Budget and the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Program and the 2022 through 2027 Capital Improvement Program to remove Pittsburgh contingency as a grant recipient and add Birmingham Foundation as a grant recipient along with Voices Against Violence, and authorizing a subsequent agreement for a total cost of $10,000.
Motion to approve, just brief discussion.
Second.
With discussion, Councilman Charlin?
Yeah, just I want to thank Chief Chintolopoli and the CD office for making this happen. This is money that from a previous year to go to Voices Against Violence, Richard Carrington's program in Beltshoover that's crucially important. We had to change using the pass-through here, and we don't believe we'll be able to use fiscal pass-throughs moving forward, but we're able to make this work and allow them to do the vital programming for after school and summer programming that they do there. So thank you for council for allowing me to do this, and thanks again Chief Chintolopoli and the CD office for making this happen.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cale Smith.
So, and I'm going to add that numerous times we've been told that we cannot use conduits, that organizations have to be their own 501c3s, file their federal 990s, and be in good standing with the state, which is also my requirements last time. So I'm glad for those. I'm glad the administration is holding to those. But here I see an exception, and this is not the first time there's been an exception. So it's not just yours. So I'm okay with this. I think Richard Carrington does amazing work. I've known him for probably 25 years, so I think he does amazing work. This has nothing to do about Richard or his organization, Voices Against Violence. Nothing to do with it. But it has everything to do with process. It has to be fair and consistent across the board. We can't say, okay, we're going to use a conduit this time, not use a conduit next time, but for this time we're going to make an exception. I mean, it has to be the same rules and same guidelines. And so for me, I'm just going to say, because partly what's bothering me about this is that this is the same conduit they were using for Mount Washington CDC, for Mount Washington Community Rec. They were using the Pittsburgh contingency. I don't know a lot about that organization, but they were told they could not use a conduit and that he has to file his own 501c3, again, which he did have before he let lapse, which I agree with. He should have to do that. But he was going to be unable to have an agreement to keep a rec center open that we've had open for 16 years for kids all across the hilltop communities and all across the area, now actually taking kids from Sheridan as well. And so we're going to tell them that they can't operate, but we're going to make an exception for this one. So I have an issue with that, and I just want to say, so if we're going to allow conduits once, we're going to allow them all the time. If we're not going to allow conduits, then we're not going to allow conduits. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 322, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That takes us
I'm going to
to
abstain from it.
one abstention. Thank you. That takes us to, to Land Use and Economic Development Committee chaired by Councilman Wilson.
Bill 169, Resolution providing for the designation as a historic structure under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances, that certain structure known as Sal's Barbershop, located at 712 Brookline Boulevard in Brookline in the 19th Ward, City of Pittsburgh. The owner of the property supports the nomination, and there is no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 169, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Bill 307.
Bill 307, Resolution amending Resolution number 711 of 2022, further amending Resolution number 767 of 2018, authorizing the mayor and the director of permits, licenses, and inspections to enter into an amended agreement or agreements with Diapollonia for on-call emergency geotechnical services, including assessments, evaluations, land remediation plans, and expert testimony of property subject to active life safety code enforcement violations by increasing the approved amount by $20,000 for an amended total cost not to exceed $360,000 over 3 years.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion.
Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I think I see the director in the audience. Director, are you still there? Yes. There, sorry, I couldn't see you for a minute. I don't want to take a lot of time on the agenda because we had a lot of bills to talk
You
about
already
in depth, but I never do, and I will prove it to you. I'm sorry, I'm being heckled again from my left, for the record, and I will put up the amount of times and minutes that I've taken from this table over the last 10 years up against many other council members. Thank you very
just
much.
took a minute doing
from
that.
the heckler.
She's been a bit of a troublemaker since she's been in.
Who's being a troublemaker? I'm
This
not
one
being
here.
this one. Yes.
Do I need to
Excuse
use
me,
this
off the
gavel?
mic. Yes. Thank you. Our guests are now at the table, so we were just filling time, Madam Chair. Thank you. So this bill is $20,000 to Dapolonia, and for geotech services, and it specifically reads that it's for structures that are facing condemnation, is the way I'm understanding it. If you could also help me understand kind of how you interact with the other places where we have landslides and also have, especially, it's usually geotech services or Dapolonia services, because it's happening more and more. And we've had previous discussions in previous budget years about like that we have no in-house capacity for geotech, and that we should. There was actually a budget amendment one year, probably back in 2016 or so, to add a like soil hydrologist in-house on staff in DPW that did not get the votes on council. And so, but again, I'm supportive of this bill, which is to use some of their services where we're facing structures. Unfortunately, and I've had this experience in my district, and I think other members have as well, where people literally were forced out of their homes just suddenly and not allowed back in because their house was at such risk of falling over the hillside. And it took years before they were able to stabilize the situation. They were literally just living in friends' basements with their kids. So how does this overlap with the other kind of Dapolonia contracts? And like, where does one start and end? And how do you all work that out between DPW, who may have them like on contract for the landslide, and versus the piece that we're authorizing here, which seems to be about the structures?
Sure. Do you want
And if you could introduce yourselves, I apologize.
Sorry. No worries. Dave Green, Director of the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections.
Monica Bender, Assistant Director of Licensing and Administration.
So I think you may be referring to the contract with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
Probably, yeah.
And so PLI's role related to landslides is limited to when the landslide impacts a structure on site. And generally speaking, if there's no structure on site and there's a landslide, DOMI is looking at that work and enforcement. If it's city-owned property, they are often engaging Dapolonia for design services. But I would defer to them to confirm how they're using Dapolonia. On PLI's side, it is limited to assessing landslides that have a potential impact on a structure.
So, help me. There's a condemnation issued. There's an imminent, obvious landslide that you can see. And then PLI is going to employ Dapolonia after you've issued the condemnation?
No, typically Dapolonia is engaged as soon as we are aware of land movement and potential impact on the structure. So we are utilizing them to understand the immediacy and potential propagation of that landslide and to assess the relative hazard and potential impacts to the structure. So we would engage them and would have a coordinated discussion to confirm whether or not appropriate to condemn based on the landslide proximity to the structure.
So you'll be using them to assess like, well, how bad is and scary, what is the level of risk, should we condemn? Sorry, there's a lot of noise in the chambers. And but since I lived through the experience through my residence, PLI also then issues like how has to evaluate what you would consider to have the situation fixed. And so would you also be using WO not just before the condemnation to figure out how risky it is, but then afterwards you have to figure out when it's remedied?
Yeah, so to clarify, when there's a landslide, we engage Apollonia to assess potential impacts to a structure. We will typically have at least one violation to say, hey, you're supposed to maintain your property. There's been land movement. That's not a safe condition. We need you to engage a design professional and tell us how this hazard will be mitigated. We are using Apollonia to assess, do we need to take additional measures? And then we will also use them in the process once the property owner engages a design professional to help us assess any plans they may put together for mitigation.
Okay. So after a condemnation, to figure out the remedy, you'll only be using Apollonia in a kind of like reactive way, reacting to what other geotech design professionals are doing.
Generally speaking, or if there are observable changes in condition.
Because it kind of just seems to me that we could also just say we have these firms under contract, or we have our own internal system or capacity, which we haven't added, but we probably should. And so we should be saying, what is the remedy? Because that's like saying, you know, how is it okay to build a building?
So PLI's role is to assess whether it meets the standards we enforce. Our role is not to tell people how to do that. Similarly, if any other type of violation, we don't come to someone and tell them necessarily how to fix it. We're saying it's unsafe because of these conditions. And also in the development process, we're not telling people how to renovate it. We're saying, does it meet this standard? We're seeing these deficiencies.
Right, and so, but you're not putting really forced standards here. And it's not a gutter. And so it's more comparable to like fire safety standards than it is, you know, gutter standards or cracked sidewalk standards. So I just, again, I don't want to belabor the point today. Obviously, I'm going to be supportive and vote for this bill. And, but I do want us to kind of maybe have in our minds that this is a place where we're not going to stop needing this capacity. And I think we probably need the capacity in-house, and that we could do a lot better with that. So I appreciate that. I thank you for answering my questions today.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 307, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you. That moves us on to Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs Committee, chaired by Councilman Mosley.
Thank you. Bill 297, resolution authorizing the Director of the Department of Finance and the Director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure on behalf of the City of Pittsburgh to execute instruments for the declaration of restrictions and covenants in favor of the Allegheny County Sanitary Authority to allow the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority operation and maintenance responsibilities of green infrastructure within certain property along the Bus Rapid Transit Project corridor.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 297, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 298.
And Bill 298, resolution providing for a reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority for costs associated with the North Avenue Signals and Safety Project, where PWSA will be responsible for paying 100% of the actual expenses involved in certain work to be described in the agreements.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Having exhausted the meeting agenda, we'll move on to announcements. This afternoon at 1:30 p.m., Council will hold an executive session on Bills 216, 300, and 325 relative to litigation matters. And next week, Council will hold a regular and standing committees meeting on Tuesday, April 9th and Wednesday, April 10th at 10 a.m. respectively. To register to speak at next week's council meetings, please fill out the sign-up form in its entirety on the council meeting webpage by 9 a.m. the day of the meeting. You may also register by calling the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Are there any comments from members? Councilman Coghill.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things, two really exciting things. First of all, I want to congratulate Councilwoman Kill-Smith. That was an incredible Easter egg hunt you had last week. Must have been, I know, Madam Chair, you were there, and it must have been 1,000 people. So I don't know how you pulled that off, but that was really an incredible event. And, you know, everybody there had a smile on their face, from the parents to the kids to everyone. It was just really incredible. So what a nice affair you have every year. The second thing I want to promote, the Battle of the Badges. The Battle of the Badges, for those of us that don't know yet, is a hockey game between our public safety, the Pittsburgh Police, Pittsburgh firefighters. One of our very own, John. John, where you at, John? There's the goalie right there for the Pittsburgh Police, and this is a legitimate hockey game.
I can take him.
Yeah, I know you can. And it's the benefit of good cause. It's the Paul Shulo, Foundation. So I'd encourage anybody who's listening or anybody here to come out. I know we have a couple of members. I know Councilman Wilson's son is a player, and unfortunately he's not going to be able to be there. And I know Councilwoman Gross's son is a goalie himself, so you know. So I just wanted to encourage and promote it. It should be a really fun time. With any luck, you may even see Councilman Charlin and I on the ice.
I heard
that.
that.
Right? Yeah. So Deb, if you could bring your future goaltender down, and you want to, get down close
You
to
might have to
PPG
go on
Pence
the
Arena.
ice, so
Maybe
we have
even
some women on
maybe
the
even
ice.
get him on the ice. But I think the game starts immediately following the Penguin game, which is roughly between 3 and 4 o'clock. So with that, I just wanted to.
Today?
No, it's Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. So I encourage everybody to come out and
Saturday
support our
after the
public
1
safety.
o'clock game, right? There's
Yes,
a 1 o'clock
it's
Penguin
immediately
game.
following the Penguin game. So, yeah.
Thank you. Council President Lavelle.
Yes, as we were sitting here, the URA sent over the initial spending plan for the affordable housing bond to all members, and so I wanted to call for a post agenda on it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We will schedule the post agenda. Any further comments from members? Yes, Councilwoman. I always want to call you Council President. Council President Emeritus,
Please don't.
Cale
I'm so
Smith.
glad. But anyway, I just want to, well, first, thank you all for working through this stuff today. But I also want to mention that I did hear you are going to be on the ice, Councilman Coghill. But so I'm going to have to either get Councilwoman Strasburg or Warwick or Gross, so we have a woman on
Rough
there.
me up.
So,
Is that right?
So we have a woman on there. But anyway, I do want to say that a few weeks ago, Beth Pittenger's mother had passed away. And I don't know if we did a moment of silence because the week I was going to do it, I was not in myself that day. But I don't want to do it right now, but I think on Tuesday I will call for a moment of silence for her mother. And I just want to offer our condolences to Beth Pittenger and let her know we did not forget that we will do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from members? Seeing none, can I please have a motion to excuse the absent members, approve the minutes, and adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second? Meeting is adjourned.
See you on the 40K.